Hello, my name is Laurie Hassall and I'm a senior consultant in geology with the global mining advisory company Snowden Optiro. So this podcast is all about the collection of geometallurgical data. Um, so the first question, what do geometallurgical samples look like and how do we collect them? Well, first of all, the appropriateness of geomet sampling and test work will have been assessed before the point at which a decision is made to conduct test work. Now, this is usually based on the type of deposit, some prior knowledge on variability or mineralogy, or it might be contaminants or complexity in the process. The ultimate goal is to gather data that can be used to develop a geomet model, which integrates geological and metallurgical information to optimize mineral processing operations. Now, the exact nature of the geomet campaign will depend upon the project stage, prior knowledge on variability, the geology of the ore body, etc. However, usually representative samples are collected from various locations within the ore body, taking into account factors such as geological variability, the ore type, mineralogy, that kind of thing. Drilling samples are often the best way to obtain representative and or variability samples in order to conduct test work on. But there are other samples that can be taken: grab samples, trench samples, channel samples, that kind of thing. But usually they are later superseded by drilling samples. The key is to ensure thorough understanding of the geology. Is it fully represented? Have enough samples been taken to ensure variability is captured? Now, the key to that really is domaining. Now, samples should be taken according to geological or geomet domains. If this is the first campaign, these domains may not be fully known, in which case full representativity of the ore body should be accounted for. Composite sample size and length need to ensure that the sample is representing one variable, for example, a certain mineral or alteration intensity or ore grade, weathering, whatever is applicable to the deposit. Sample size is also determined by the flow sheet. Sample size and PSD need to fully replicate the proposed crusher setting, for example, and to ensure enough product is produced in the test work. And finally, sample size might also be dictated by mining heights and stope heights in the proposed mine. Okay, so next question. So once samples are collected, what is the next stage? So usually this involves going straight to metallurgical test work, but it's important to ensure that enough data is gathered from the samples before they are crushed and processed. For example, detailed logging or mineralogical logging. And once that's done, next is designing the flow sheet. So the expected flow sheet should be represented on the bench scale, and parameters should be kept consistent for every sample. The flow sheet needs to represent the proposed flow sheet for the mine, but as close as practically possible in a lab. Crushing is often the hardest process to replicate due to obtaining the correct gap settings on jaws and rolls, for example. As are screens, sometimes it's hard to obtain exact screen sizes in the lab, and often screening has to substitute for hydrocyclones when in fact cyclones are in the flow sheet. The point is that the bench scale test work should replicate the flow sheet as far as is reasonably practicable. So the next question, so what happens with all the data that's generated? Well, analysis of data should be performed by geologists and metallurgists, and the objective is to find relationships between geology and metallurgical performance. Key indicators can be grades, mineralogy, geology codes, logging codes, that kind of thing. These indicators can be compared with met performance from the test work, which can often be, the outputs can often be recoveries or process grades, for example. The key is finding an indicator that is easily obtainable in the future. For example, mineralogical data is good, but is collecting that kind of data achievable in the future? Perhaps proxy should be considered if achievable, for example. So the next question: so how many geomet campaigns does it take to better understand the geometallurgy of an ore body? Well, put simply, the more data that is collected, the more data to analyze, and the more you'll know about the ore body. But it entirely depends on the goal of the geomet program in the first place and the stage the project is at. Often it's important to increase resolution at every technical study stage. If in operations, it might be the question has been answered that related to the performance of a particular process, or it might be the case that more data is required as the life of mine progresses and the mine gets deeper. Remember, the goal is to build a model, whether theoretical or as a block model, that helps provide information to define or improve the process and the economics of the project or mine. The end point is ultimately defined by the improvement in MPV of the project or the operation. I'll cover what happens to the data generated from the geomet campaigns and the integration into 3D models and block models in another episode. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to listen to more of our Fresh Thinking by Snowden Optiro podcasts, you can find them for free on our website, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this podcast on geomet sampling, please subscribe so we can keep you up to date with our technical podcasts.